Hello there guys. I've got a fantastic book here to show you today. This is Scale Modelling World War II German Camouflage Uniforms by Plastic Invasion. And as the name suggests, this takes you both through the history of German uniforms in World War II, but also gives you detailed tutorials on how to paint them. Now originally this book was a Kickstarter set up by Plastic Invasion to get the book going, get it published. But now it is available on general release from their website. So if you do head over to plasticinvasion.com, you'll see they actually sell a couple of figures now as well. They didn't do that previously. But this is the book that we're interested in, Scale Modelling World War II. There we can see 238 pages, hardcover with some nice previews of the pages there to make it clear what you get. I'll show you a lot more in this video as well. And it's €59. That's quite a lot of money, but books are expensive these days, and this is a really good quality book, as you will see when we open it up. There are also a number of dealers around the world which will sell this book, including M Workshop actually in Singapore. That's a really nice little model shop in Singapore. I've been there many times, absolutely stacked to the ceiling with model kits. You've got B&A Model World in Australia, another great store. Panzer Rex and Chapel Row in the UK, and various dealers in the US including Michigan Toy. So lots of options out there if you can't or don't want to buy directly from the website. And as I mentioned, Plastic Invasion do have a couple of figures for sale now, or at least one 35th scale figure and one 12th scale bust. Let's take a quick look at that figure. So this is a 1/35th scale figure of a character from the series Dusty Faces. It looks very well moulded, doesn't it? I think the more I get around to painting figures, the more I realise that high quality figures are really important to improve your paintwork. Certainly when I was painting those medical figures for my World War I diorama, which weren't the sharpest, I really did struggle more than maybe necessary. So this is a pre-order line by the looks of it, will be delivered by the end of January next year, 2024. Now book reviews are always a bit difficult because I don't want to show you close-up, high-quality images of every single page, because obviously this is copyrighted material. So what I will do is I'll give you a look at the contents page, a detailed look at one of the chapters, and then we'll look at pages here and there in the remaining chapters. So here we are on the contents page. It's divided by the different types of camouflage schemes, as you might expect. And to be honest, the only one that I recognised when I opened this book was the second one here, the Splitter Tarn Muster. Overall, this book covers 6 different uniforms. And you can see from the page numbers there on the right just how many pages are dedicated to each one. So let's dive in and have a look at the first one, which is the Platanen Muster, which I'm probably pronouncing incorrectly, sorry. So here at the start of the first chapter we have Operation Barbarossa, 1941 summer. A couple of historical photos there. So a bit of history there for context, talking about the German invasion of the Soviet Union and the rapid advances they made in the initial stages of that campaign. Another reference photo over the page there with a bit more background. Then on page 13 we've got the first of our reenactment photos. One thing that's unique about this book is it offers a combination of black and white historical photos and full colour reenactment photos. I think that really helps bring the uniforms alive, and of course if you're painting them, black and white photos alone are not particularly helpful. Then we move into the equipments page, and straight away we've got some background information here about the tunic. So here we're wearing a camouflage smock in the early hand-screened half-plane tree pattern. This was one of the earliest, longest-serving and most iconic Waffen-SS camouflages. Originally developed for tents, they were continually modified and changed over time. Then, just as an indication of the attention to detail here, we've got this small note here. It says the pattern did not repeat as often as the later machine-printed patterns. This was a hand-printed pattern. and this is one of several German camouflage uniforms which were dual-sided. So we've got the dominant green on one side for the summer, and then the sort of brown and orange for the autumn on the other side. Then we can see some close-ups over the page of the helmet and various parts of that tunic. The photography of the reenactors in this book is really top quality. All-round view there of the soldier. Then we move on to some shots of the weapons and equipment. And again, we've got details of their background, their history, their design. The jack boots over here. Hobnails on the bottom, often something that maybe modelers miss. Then we move on to the bulk of each section, which is the step-by-step painting section. So in this case, they're painting an Alpine Miniatures model, and it tells you here it's figure 35166. But it also says that some modifications were made because the figure was showing a slightly later version of the uniform. So some pockets had to be changed to create the correct M38 uniform. The figure is primed, and then we move into the tutorial steps. You'll notice that all the paint references in here are Vallejo model colour. There are little swatches of colour underneath each bottle though, so it should help you match colours if you use a different system. Personally, I do quite like Vallejo model colour for brush painting. They thin with water, they go down very nicely, and they seem to last quite a long time as well. So what have we got here? With our figure primed in white, step 2 is a brown sand base coat, quite thick to get good coverage. Step 3, we're mixing that brown sand with a small amount of beige red. Actually, not a small amount, it's a 1-to-1 ratio, as a kind of glaze. Step 4, we're adding some highlights there. And then step 5, some smaller highlights with a lighter colour paint. All the paint colours are given in the text, I'm just not reading it out verbatim. And then over the page we've got 4 more steps, so 9 steps in total towards creating that face. That's definitely something I'm going to be looking at carefully in my future videos, because face painting really is something that I'm not good at. And at the moment, if you saw one of my recent videos, I simply used 2 colours for the face, a base coat, which is a sort of darker brown colour, and then a light flesh highlight. So I would like to improve my, my figure painting quite a lot. We then move on to the helmet cover. Again, we've got the paint shown there, there's 12 there, but some of them are repeated from the earlier steps. There's a few flesh colours there, for example. It's not a additional 12 paints that you need. And again, we've got the base coat there in that sort of reddy brown colour. The green patches going on, and then the green highlight patches going on at the bottom of the page, before moving across for the camouflage pattern. That's a lovely result, isn't it? Very well detailed. It's a very similar process for the tunic here, and you can see how it's detailing, putting down the base coat, but then putting down the highlights for that base coat's colour before adding the camouflage pattern. And the shadows, in fact, are put down on the next page as well, before any of the camouflage goes down. Highlights there on the first layer of green spots, and then over the page you can slowly see things building up. It's really good to have these numerous photos. You can slowly see everything building up, much better than sort of a brown figure and then the next figure is just, and there's the green finished, and then there's a black finished. It does help you to see how that has been built up over time. I won't show you every page of this section because the process is quite similar. I did particularly like this section on the canteen here though, where we've got that kind of slightly furry texture that's been represented here with the various colours and then a filter over the top. I have to be honest, I've never done that on any of the canteens that my soldiers have had. I've always painted it a single colour, and that's probably why mine don't look anywhere near as good as this. Here's another great example on the mess tin. So again, my mess tins typically get a single colour, maybe with a little bit of sponge chipping if I'm feeling fancy. But here you can just see the difference, the tonal variation here, and the really minute chipping to make it look like it's really been used well. Definitely a lot to learn from this book, I think, for me at least. We then continue through the rest of the equipment. Nothing left to chance or guesswork here. Even the ammunition pouches, the collar and the collar tabs. Quite a detailed section here on doing both the wood grain and the metal details on the rifle. And even the hands get a separate section to the face. Wood grain and metal effects on the grenade. And then we have the final result. Doesn't that figure look great? Really impressive. We've got 4 views there from each direction. Lovely wood grain effect on both the entrenching tool and the rifle. Fantastic overall result. And remember, everything that we've looked at here so far is just one chapter out of 6. And each of the other chapters has the same structure, the background, the history of the equipment and the uniform, and then the detailed painting guides as well. I'm not going to show you a detailed guide of all of those, but I'm going to jump into just a couple of them. And one of them is going to be this one here, the splitter tarn muster. This is that quite famous uniform pattern with the rain streaks going down it. And I'm quite intrigued to see how they'll paint those. So again, we've got some background information here. This was typically a paratrooper's uniform, if I remember correctly. Although this here is a black and white photo, it is a reenactment. And it does label it that in the text as well. Bit more history of paratrooper operations. Going on to the equipment, we can see the reenactor there with the gear on. Lots of excellent shots as before. Even with details like the belt. Equipment. And here we are back at the painting guide again, this time primed in black. So we've got a face painting guide there. If anything, more steps on that one than the previous one. So of course we've got some variations of the same techniques in each tutorial. A beige base coat for the paratrooper, before we start to block in the brown and the green. And the text here is talking about following an actual pattern, because it's quite distinctive, this pattern. It's got these sharp angles and edges. I can see how it would be quite easy to lose those if you weren't careful with your painting. Moving through the tutorial, and then here on the final step we've got the rain streaks. So the text does note that of course in 1/35th scale these would be absolutely tiny, so subtle is the way to go, and the paint in this case has been thinned down quite a lot, but you can see those rain streaks there on the uniform. Let's look very quickly at one more example, because I think this does highlight the detail and the research that's gone into the book, and it's certainly something that I learnt while reading this. So we've got another example of a camouflage scheme here. And a rookie like me might just think this is another one of those sort of P-dot camouflage schemes, identical to the one that we've looked at in detail already in this video. But if we look at the close-ups and compare them with the close-ups from earlier, we can tell they are actually quite different in their pattern. Now, if this wasn't pointed out to me, I probably wouldn't notice it, but of course if you care about that level of detail, which of course a lot of modelers do, then that's really helpful. Finally, another scheme which I didn't know much about, the Tello Minetico M1929 camouflage pattern. Apparently this is quite a common pattern in World War II, although to be honest I haven't seen it much before. But then again, maybe I've not been looking carefully enough. We've certainly got a reference photo here, where the soldier on the left is wearing this pattern on his trousers. Then again some close-ups of the uniform and some reenactors. I love this final result here, this motorcyclist in this uniform. And this has actually given me a lot of inspiration. I've still not finished building my Ardennes tank repair diorama, which will have a lot of figures in it. And to be honest, most of the times in the past when I've painted German figures, I've simply painted them in overall field grey, one of the variations of field grey. But these camouflage patterns are extremely interesting, and definitely something that I want to have a look at. So guys, I'm going to wind things up now. That was my look at scale modelling World War II German camouflage uniforms by Plastic Invasion. You can find this book and a list of dealers and their figures at plasticinvasion.com. I really enjoyed looking through this book and I already learnt quite a lot from it, and I'm definitely going to give it another read from cover to cover as I'm developing some future projects. I really like the way that it combines really detailed knowledge of quite a niche subject with the detailed tutorials for people who maybe are not so used to painting figures like me. I want to thank everyone for watching. If you liked the video, please consider leaving a comment or giving me a like. I really hope to see you in a future video, and until then, have fun modelling.